When most people think about building a PC on a tight budget, the graphics card feels like the biggest limitation. It's the one part everyone assumes you have to overspend on just to get something usable. But that assumption is exactly why so many people end up paying more than they need to. Because buried beneath the junk and the bad listings, there are graphics cards that still deliver real performance without draining your wallet. Cards that can handle real 1080p gaming, creative work, streaming, and everyday use without falling apart the moment you push them. In this video, we're breaking down 12 graphics cards under $150 that actually earn their spot, showing you which low-cost GPUs can do far more than most people expect, and helping you build smarter, not bigger, with the money you already have. 12. GTX 970. The card that barely still makes sense. The GTX 970 is not an exciting graphics card, but it can still be a functional one if you understand its limits. It handles esports titles, older games, and everyday desktop use well enough to feel usable rather than frustrating, especially when paired with realistic settings. For common workloads like light gaming, media consumption, and basic creative tasks, performance remains steady. Systems feel responsive, and competitive titles in particular run smoothly without demanding constant adjustments. For upgrading older machines or reviving pre-builts, this card still offers a noticeable improvement. Its limitations appear in newer, heavier applications where modern textures and effects begin to strain its memory setup. Stutters and inconsistencies can show up when workloads exceed what the card was designed to handle. This does not make it unusable, but it does mean it rewards moderation. The GTX 970 works best as a short-term solution rather than a long-term foundation. It is a practical option for tight budgets and temporary builds, offering just enough capability to justify its place at the on this list. 11. RX 570 8GB, the budget power hog that still delivers. The RX 570 8GB is a card that prioritizes capability over refinement. It was built to push performance at a low cost, and that focus still shows in how it behaves today. In everyday use, it handles 1080p workloads comfortably across gaming, media consumption, and light creative tasks. Applications feel responsive, esports titles run smoothly, and even heavier programs remain usable with sensible settings. The experience is not elegant, but it is dependable. The trade-off is efficiency. This card draws more power and produces more heat than most modern budget options, which means airflow and power supply quality matter more than usual. In a well-ventilated system, it settles into a stable rhythm. In a poorly built one, its weaknesses become obvious. What keeps the RX 570 relevant is memory headroom. With 8GB available, it avoids many of the slowdowns caused by modern applications running out of space. That alone helps it age better than many newer low-end cards. This is not a quiet or compact solution, but it is an honest one. If your build can handle the heat and power, this card still delivers solid value for the money. And if you want similar reliability without the extra heat and noise, the next card takes a far more restrained approach. 10. GTX 1060 6GB, the former king that refuses to disappear. The GTX 1060 6GB earned its reputation the hard way. For a long time, it was the default answer for smooth 1080p gaming, and that legacy still carries weight today. Even now, it remains a surprisingly usable option for people who understand what it does well and where it finally starts to show its age. In everyday gaming, this card still feels familiar and dependable. Titles like Fortnite, Counter-Strike 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, and older story-driven games run comfortably at medium settings without constant tweaking. The experience is stable, predictable, and free from the sudden spikes or crashes that plague weaker budget cards. For casual players and competitive gamers alike, that consistency still matters. The 6GB of video memory is the quiet reason this card has survived as long as it has. It gives just enough breathing room to avoid the worst texture-related issues that now punish lower memory GPUs. While you will not be maxing out modern visual settings, you can still play newer games by dialing things back and prioritizing frame stability over eye candy. Where the cracks begin to show is in newer releases. that lean heavily on modern optimizations. Driver support has slowed, and that means this card no longer benefits from the same fine-tuning that newer architectures receive. Performance in brand new titles can feel underwhelming compared to what the hardware once delivered, and power efficiency is no longer a strong point relative to its output. Still, the GTX 1066GB occupies an important space in the budget landscape. It is not exciting, and it is not future-proof, but it is familiar and functional. For someone upgrading an older system, building a low-cost rig for esports, or stepping into PC gaming without taking risks, it remains a reasonable and understandable choice. If you are wondering whether there is a card in this price range that feels just as stable, but noticeably more efficient and modern, the next one answers that question in a way many people overlook. 9. GTX 1650 GDDR6, the quietly misunderstood one. The GTX 1650 with GDDR6 memory is often dismissed before people ever understand what version they are looking at. That confusion is exactly why this card still exists in the budget space at all. Most people lump every GTX 1650 together, even though the GDDR6 model behaves very differently from the slower variants that gave this name a bad reputation. In real-world use, this card focuses on consistency rather than raw power. Esports titles like Fortnite, Valorant, Counter-Strike 2, and Overwatch run smoothly at 1080p with medium to high settings, delivering stable frame pacing without constant drops. For competitive players, that stability matters more than chasing the highest possible numbers on a benchmark chart. The experience feels controlled and predictable, which is something many cheaper cards fail to deliver. Where the GDDR6 memory helps most is in responsiveness. Textures load faster, frame timing feels tighter, and everyday gameplay avoids the hitching that plagues lower-end cards with slower memory. It does not magically turn this into a powerhouse, but it does make the card feel noticeably more refined than its reputation suggests. For lighter creative work, basic streaming setups, and general desktop use, it remains efficient and easy to live with. The limitation becomes clear the moment you move into heavier, modern games. This card was never designed for demanding visual effects, high-resolution textures, or long-term future-proofing. You will be adjusting settings, prioritizing performance over visuals, and accepting that some newer titles simply require compromises. That is not a flaw as much as it is the reality of what this GPU is meant to do. What keeps the GTX 1650 GDDR6 relevant is how little it asks from the rest of your system. Power draw is low, heat output is manageable, and it works well in small cases and modest builds where older, hotter cards would struggle. For compact systems, office conversions, or quiet gaming setups, that efficiency becomes a real advantage. This is not a card you buy expecting to be impressed. It is a card you buy when you want something dependable, efficient, and simple that still handles everyday gaming without drama. And if you are willing to accept its limits, it quietly does its job better than many people expect. But if you are looking for something that trades efficiency for brute force and refuses to fade away no matter how old it gets, the next card on this list has a reputation for exactly that. 8. RX 580, 8GB, the undead workhorse that refuses to quit. The RX 588GB is one of those graphics cards that feels like it should have disappeared by now, yet it keeps showing up in budget builds and proving why people still trust it. It was built in an era when raw power mattered more than efficiency, and that design philosophy is exactly why it continues to hold its ground. At 1080p, this card is still capable of handling a wide range of games with surprisingly few compromises. Titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, Far Cry 6, and Cyberpunk can be made very playable with sensible settings, while esports games run effortlessly without pushing the hardware too hard. The performance is not flashy, but it is consistent, which is often more important in real gameplay than chasing. Higher numbers. One of the biggest reasons this card has survived is its video memory. With 8GB available, modern games are far less likely to slam into texture limits, which helps avoid stutters and sudden performance drops. That extra headroom allows the RX 580 to remain usable in situations where lower memory cards start to struggle, especially in open-world or visually dense titles. The downside, as always, comes down to power and heat. This card draws more electricity than most modern budget options and runs noticeably warmer as a result. Fan noise can increase under load, and case airflow becomes more important than many first-time builders expect. If your system is poorly ventilated or paired with a weak power supply, the RX 580 will expose those weaknesses quickly. However, when installed in a system with decent airflow and a capable power supply, the card settles into a reliable rhythm. It does not spike unpredictably, and it does not suddenly collapse under demanding workloads. What you get instead is a dependable level of performance that has aged far better than many people expected. The RX 588GB is not elegant, quiet, or efficient, but it is honest. It delivers exactly what it promises and continues to perform in situations where many newer low-end cards fall short. For budget builders who value raw capability over refinement, it remains a surprisingly strong option. The next card takes that idea even further by starting life as a high-end product that simply refuses to fade away. 7. GTX 1070, the former high-end card that just keeps going. The GTX 1070 comes from a very different place than most budget GPUs. This was not designed as an entry-level card or a compromise option. It started life as a high-end graphics card, and that origin story is exactly why it still feels unusually capable in low-cost builds today. In real-world gaming, the difference shows immediately. At 1080p, this card handles modern games with a level of confidence that cheaper, newer GPUs often lack. Titles like Apex Legends, The Witcher 3, Cyberpunk, and Spider-Man run smoothly at medium settings. And with a bit of tuning, staying above comfortable frame rates is very achievable. Esports titles are effortless, delivering stable performance without the need to constantly adjust settings. A major reason the GTX 1070 continues to hold up is its video memory. With 8 GB available, it avoids many of the bottlenecks that hold back cards with lower memory limits. Textures load more smoothly, open-world environments feel less constrained, and overall gameplay feels less fragile. You are not constantly brushing up against hard limits, which makes the experience feel more relaxed and forgiving. That said, age still matters. While the card remains powerful in raw terms, it no longer benefits from the same level of optimization that newer architectures receive. Driver updates still exist, but they are not tailored to squeeze out extra performance in the latest releases. You will not see dramatic gains over time, and cutting-edge features are not part of the equation here. Even so, the GTX 1070 has a durability factor that many budget GPUs lack. These cards were built to handle higher loads, better cooling solutions, and longer gaming sessions. In everyday use, that translates into stability and consistency, rather than flashy performance spikes. It simply does its job and keeps doing it. For budget builders who value strength over novelty, this card represents a rare opportunity to buy former high-end capability at a much lower cost. It is not modern, and it is not future-proof, but it still feels solid in a way that many cheaper options do not. And if you are wondering whether there is a card that trades brute strength for modern efficiency and quieter operation, the next one shifts the conversation in a completely different direction. 6. RX 6500 XT, the card everyone misjudged. The RX 6500 XT is one of the most misunderstood graphics cards in the budget space, and that misunderstanding is exactly why it deserves a proper explanation. When this card first appeared, it was judged almost entirely on what it lacked instead of what it was actually designed to do. And when you look at it in the right context, the picture changes quite a bit. At its best, this card is extremely efficient. Power draw is low, heat output is minimal, and it runs quietly, even under sustained gaming loads. For 1080p AOE sports titles like Valorant, Rocket League, Counter-Strike 2, and Overwatch, performance is smooth and consistent without stressing the rest of your system. In lighter modern games, careful settings adjustments can still deliver a very playable experience that feels far better than the price suggests. Where things get tricky is platform choice. This card relies heavily on being paired with a modern system to perform properly. On newer motherboards and processors, it behaves as intended and avoids many of the bottlenecks that gave it a bad reputation. On older platforms, those same limitations become very noticeable, and performance can suffer in ways that feel confusing if you do not know why. Another reality you have to accept is memory. With limited video memory available, this card is not meant for maxed-out textures or heavy visual effects. It rewards smart settings and punishes excess. If you treat it like a precision tool instead of a brute force solution, it responds well. If you expect it to behave like a higher-tier card, frustration follows quickly. What makes the RX 6500 interesting is how well it fits certain builds. Small cases, low-wattage power supplies, quiet setups, and efficient systems all benefit from its design. For the right builder, it solves problems that older, hotter cards simply cannot. Before we go any further, if this breakdown is already helping you think differently about budget GPUs, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel a lot, and it lets more people find information like this before they waste money on the wrong parts. This is not a card for everyone, and it was never meant to be. But for builders who understand its limits and build around its strengths, it becomes a surprisingly capable option instead of the disappointment most people expect. Moving past misunderstood cards and into options that feel safer, smoother, and easier to recommend across the board, the next one does exactly that. 5. GTX 1660, the safe choice that rarely disappoints. The GTX 1660 is a graphics card built around balance rather than extremes. It does not try to impress with flashy features or inflated claims. Instead, it focuses on being dependable in the kinds of systems people actually build on a budget. In everyday use, this card feels smooth and predictable. It handles 1080p workloads comfortably, whether that means casual gaming, photo editing, light video work, or running multiple applications at once without slowing down. Video playback is clean, desktop performance feels responsive, and basic creative tasks never feel strained. One of the reasons this card remains easy to recommend is how little it demands from the rest of the system. Power consumption stays reasonable, heat output is manageable, and noise levels remain low. That makes it a good fit for smaller cases, modest power supplies, and builds where you do not want the graphics card dictating every other component choice. This is not a feature-driven card. There is no ray tracing and no advanced upscaling technology built into the experience. What it offers instead is consistent raster performance that behaves exactly the way you expect it to. For many users, that reliability matters far more than having the newest features they may never use. The GTX 1660 earns its place because it minimizes risk. If your goal is to build or upgrade a system that feels stable, usable, and frustration-free across a wide range of tasks, this card quietly delivers without demanding attention. From here, the list shifts toward cards that feel similar on the surface, but bring either more speed or more efficiency in ways that change how the whole system behaves. 4. GTX 1660 Super, the upgrade you feel immediately. The GTX 1660 Super looks similar to the standard version on paper, but in actual use, the difference is easy to notice. This is the kind of upgrade that shows itself through responsiveness rather than raw numbers. Day to day, the system feels smoother and more confident. Applications open faster, multitasking feels less constrained, and 1080p workloads across gaming, media use, and light creative tasks run with fewer slowdowns. Everything feels a little more relaxed, even when you are doing several things at once. That improvement comes from better memory speed and overall efficiency. Data moves more quickly, which reduces small interruptions like loading pauses or uneven frame pacing. It is not about dramatic gains, but about removing friction from everyday use. Despite being faster, the card remains easy to build around. Power draw stays reasonable, heat is well controlled, and noise levels remain low. It fits comfortably into compact cases and modest systems without forcing changes elsewhere. The GTX 1660 Super earns its place because it refines an already solid formula. It does not change how you use your computer. It simply makes everything feel smoother while staying predictable and dependable. And from here, the list moves away from refinement and into cards that introduce entirely new capabilities at this price point. 3. RTX 2060, the entry point to modern features. The RTX 2060 represents a shift in what a budget graphics card can offer. This is where modern features stop being marketing language and start acting as practical tools that expand what your system can handle. In everyday use, the card feels flexible and responsive. It handles 1080p workloads comfortably across gaming, photo editing, light video work, and multitasking without feeling strained. Tasks that benefit from acceleration, such as rendering previews or encoding video, complete more smoothly than on older raster-only cards. What separates this card from earlier options is its support for newer technologies that help stretch performance beyond raw hardware limits. Upscaling features allow heavier workloads to remain usable without forcing aggressive compromises, which keeps the overall experience fluid even when demands increase. There are limits to be aware of. With a smaller pool of video memory, this card performs best when settings are balanced rather than pushed to extremes. Used thoughtfully, it remains stable and reliable across a wide range of applications. The RTX 2060 earns its place by offering versatility. It fits comfortably into mixed-use systems where gaming, creative work, and everyday computing all matter. From here, the focus shifts again toward cards built around efficiency and long-term value, rather than added features. 2. RX 6600, the modern budget, all-rounder. The RX 6600 earns its position by feeling modern in ways that go beyond raw speed. This is a card designed around efficiency, consistency, and everyday usability, which makes it especially appealing for people who want a system that feels balanced rather than pushed to its limits. In regular use, everything feels smooth and composed. 1080p workloads are handled comfortably across a mix of activities, from gaming and media consumption to photo editing, light video work, and running multiple applications at once. The system stays responsive under pressure, and that sense of stability carries through even when you switch between tasks throughout the day. A big part of that experience comes from how efficiently this card operates. Power draw stays low, heat output is easy to manage, and noise levels remain minimal. That opens the door to smaller cases, quieter builds, and modest power supplies without sacrificing capability. For many builders, that flexibility matters more than squeezing out a few extra percentage points of performance. Another strength is how well this card continues to age. Ongoing software support and a modern design help it maintain performance and compatibility over time. Updates tend to improve stability and efficiency rather than simply keeping the lights on, which adds confidence that the card will remain useful across a wide range of applications. This is not a flashy card, and it does not rely on headline features to justify itself. What it offers instead is a well-rounded experience that feels current, efficient, and easy to live with. For most people, building under a strict budget, that combination is hard to ignore. And now, there is only one card left, the one that pushes the upper edge of this price range and makes you question whether stopping at number 2 would actually be settling. 1. RTX 3060, the one that changes the math. The RTX 3060 sits at the very edge of what most people consider a strict budget build. But it earns this position by completely changing what that budget can realistically achieve. This is the card that stops feeling like a compromise and starts feeling like a long-term solution. In everyday use, the difference is immediate. Systems built around this card feel more relaxed, more capable, and less fragile under load. 1080p workloads are handled effortlessly across a wide range of tasks, including gaming, creative work, video editing, streaming, and heavy multitasking. Applications open smoothly, timelines feel responsive, and the system rarely feels like it is being pushed to its limits. A major reason this card stands out is its video memory. With a larger pool available, it avoids many of the constraints that quietly limit lower-tier options. Larger projects, higher quality assets, and more demanding applications simply behave better when they are not constantly fighting memory limits. That extra headroom makes the entire system feel more future-ready, even if your needs grow over time. Modern features also play a role here, but they feel supportive rather than mandatory. Upscaling technologies help maintain smooth performance when workloads become heavier, and broader software support improves compatibility across creative tools, streaming platforms, and everyday applications. The result is a card that adapts well to different use cases instead of being locked into a single role. Just as important, this card remains practical to live with. Power consumption stays reasonable for its performance level. Cooling requirements are manageable, and it fits comfortably into a wide range of builds without forcing expensive upgrades elsewhere. For many people, that balance is what makes it feel like the safest choice on the list. The RTX 3060 earns the top spot because it removes doubt. It is the card that lets you stop worrying about whether your system can handle what you want to do and start focusing on actually using it. If you can stretch to it, this is the option that makes the rest of the list feel like stepping stones. Before you go, if this breakdown helped you understand what is actually possible under a tight budget, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps more people find practical build advice instead of wasting money on the wrong parts. And let me know in the comments which card surprised you the most or what you are planning to build next.